In the days of my youth, gotten told what it was to build my. In 1966, my band Chain Reaction opened for the Yardbirds at Staples High School in Westport, Connecticut. We all carried our equipment into the hall together. As I recall, I dragged a couple of Jimmy Page's amps as well. So I was a roadie for the Yardbirds. Or at least that's how the press took it at the time. I told this story. Anyway, it was the first time I ever heard him play, and it hit me like a heat wave. 3 years later, in 1969, I saw Led Zeppelin perform at the Boston Tea Party. They ran out of songs after they played their whole first album, so they had to do a bunch of Elvis tunes because we wouldn't let them get off stage. I just sat cross-legged in the back of the room while they played the middle section of Dazed and Confused, and it was so fucking heavy that it made me cry. Another time I cried over Led Zeppelin was an hour later when Jimmy Page emerged from the dressing room with a beautiful girl in his arm. I would have been very impressed, except it was the girl I'd been living with up until that moment. And I was getting an incredible visual of all my clothes being thrown out into the alley on 21st Street. But Jimmy was such a motherfucker on stage, I couldn't hold it against him. Anywho, about the same time, there was this guy called Henry Smith, who was my neighbor in Sunapee, New Hampshire. I was a drummer back then, and he was my drum roadie. He was a good friend. He even cut the sleeves off his grandmother's fur coat so I could have something stupid to wear on stage. Well, Henry's the one that got us the gig with the Yardbirds, and all went well until one day he comes up to me and he just quits. I got a gig with Zeppelin, he says. I was devastated. Who was going to set up my drums at Murray's Clam Shack at the Brattleboro, Vermont? But once I got over the jealousy, I got really excited, because I knew somebody who was going to work with Led Zeppelin. That was the equivalent of going to the moon with Neil Armstrong in an Apollo capsule full of babes. And I knew I'd have enough cymbals and drumsticks for the next 3 years. Eventually, Henry the Horse, as Jimmy and Robert affectionately called him, introduced me to the band. On the first occasion, I got to sit at Bonzo's drum kit at Electric Ladyland Studios. I could feel the power even without him physically being there. Later, we went over to a sound check at Madison Square Garden. When I got there, the road crew and the union people were all eating, and the band hadn't arrived yet. The stage was empty, and so were the 19,000 seats. The audience, the silence was deafening. I walked out to the stage. I laid down, my head hanging backwards off the edge. I was overwhelmed. I was having delirious delusions of rock and roll grandeur, imagining that I was roaming the countryside, raping and pillaging, disguised as an ambassador of rock and roll. And that's just one of the things we learned from Led Zeppelin. So here we are. I'm still hanging off the edge of the stage. Now we get to induct Led Zeppelin into the Hall of Fame. Life was pretty good, huh, Joe?
Yeah. Everything you ever heard about Led Zeppelin was true. They were like Lord Byron, mad, bad, and dangerous to know. They mixed Celtic riffs with the blues and spiced it up with Indian and Arabic modes. It was pure chemistry, kind of like Howlin' Wolf meets the Loch Ness Monster. No way was it for the faint of heart. Led Zeppelin was the real deal, and it took, like Muhammad in the desert. They were even big in Vietnam, where the troops bolted 8-track players onto their personnel carriers and went into battle broadcasting Whole Lotta Love. What I loved about Led Zeppelin, besides Communication Breakdown, the song remains the same, Kashmir, No Quarter, and the Rain Song, and about 100 other songs, was that they didn't take themselves all that seriously. They had a no-bullshit mentality and no compunctions about using the blues as a way of catapulting their music into Caledonia's damp knickers. And they were simply the best musicians going. You could put Jimmy Page up against any guitarist in the world. Same with Bonzo on the drums and Zeppelin's unsung hero, John Paul Jones, on bass, keyboards, and orchestrations. His musicianship and classical slant on things gave Zeppelin an added dimension that constantly kept them in a class of their own. And then there was Robert Plant. He came to the first New Yardbirds band rehearsal in South London straight from his job building roads. He had tar in his hands and tar in his hair, and when he opened his mouth, it was like a fucking air raid siren going off. Keith Moon told him it would go over like a Led Zeppelin. For the next 12 years, they reigned as undisputed world champions of rock, set an unattainable standard of music and mystique for those of us who tried to follow them.
Okay, whom the gods love, die young. We can't let this moment go now without talking about Bonzo, because he's one of the most important reasons we're here tonight. John Henry Bonham, before he came along, all the great English drummers, Ringo, Charlie Watts, Keith Moon, were short, tempered. But John was big, radically big, and had an attack that was like bombs away, baby. And even when he threw the sticks away and played with his hands, you noticed that the volume didn't go down. He had great feel, great drive, and an incredible combination of soul and technique. To everyone else in his band, he was warm and funny, loved his family and farm, but did not like to tour. As Robert once put it, John often got swamped by the absolute remoteness inside the fish tank, the fish bowl. These were the days before anyone knew how to handle the shadow side of our business, like too many master musicians before. And since he left us before his time, Bonzo ruled. He still rules. Even today, no one can take his place. In many ways, he was the lead in Zeppelin, and perhaps the most fitting tribute to him is that after his death, his old band called it quits.
I just want to say a couple of things about what Zeppelin means to me. I love this band because they had no limits. They weren't musical snobs and never held on to any one style. Zeppelin would change gears 6 times on one album. They played blues, funk, rock, reggae, and ballads with equal ease. I think it's laughable that some people still consider them just a heavy metal band, since at least half of their best songs are acoustic. They were doing unplugged long before it was the hip thing to do. I learned a lot from Jimmy Page. The best lesson was don't be afraid to play any instrument, stringed or otherwise. He played slide guitar, electric, acoustic, 12-string, bass, mandolin, sitar, and dulcimer. He invented strange tunings, whatever it took to create the mood. So, Jimmy, when are you going to show me how to play the Rain song? Maybe after. So I know for Stephen and the rest of our band, when I say that Aerosmith wouldn't exist in its present form without Led Zeppelin's continuing inspiration. A few months ago, when I was having lunch with Jimmy Page in Buenos Aires, he asked me to do this tonight, and I felt like I was the one being honored. So right now, I want to tell John Bonham, John Paul Jones, Robert Plant, and Jimmy Page that we and millions of their fans all over the world hold them in the highest esteem. It's an incredible honor for me to say to them, welcome to the Hall of Fame.
It says please speak 6 inches from the microphone. So I finally got some technique. Thank you for bringing us here, and being English, it's quite daunting. I'll just have to change this a minute. Oh no, it might be another TV set. I can't follow Neil. He had his manager here, you see, and also I don't have an invisible group. We're honoured to have with us Jason and Zoe Bonham. We've got to split the award between them. It's going to be interesting. And all that stuff that everybody was saying, I can't remember much about that, Ahmed. The thing is that because we didn't really work after about 1969 much, I can't remember very much at all. But I do remember... I'm getting a bit more comfortable. I do remember Ahmed travelling around with us quite a lot and coming to see us in a sort of pre-recording state one time in London. I never wanted to do this. I always thought we'd always be rebels. Eddie's right. Actually, Eddie's lucky. Amit came all the way from New York to London to see us. We were doing some of the last final touches for, I think, Physical Graffiti. And he came to a rehearsal place in London, and a lot of pomp and circumstance. And just like Neil said, when Amit came, you had to be good, you know. So it was a pretty shitty place. It belonged to Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And but we got a good rate on it. And so we got a big couch on the stage, and we started to show off to Amit, and we had a big PA, and we were playing away furiously, and we were really proud. I think it was the Wanton Song, or some lurid piece of music, and we were doing. It was as if we were playing in front of 20 or 30,000 people. We were doing all this stuff, and the place was empty. There was nobody there except for Amit on the couch, and we spun around, going, and Amit was snoring. And there's a lot of other stories like that. I've talked myself right up a blind alley, but our relationships over the years have been wonderful. Led Zeppelin was with Atlantic Records from start to finish, and I've been with them, Atlantic, from '68 to now. And I always consider that Amit and his faith in us, despite the fact that the music scene was changing and that commerciality at one point became the actual the hallmark of success alone. Amit was very strong in our favour, and later so too was Doug Morris. And I think we should mention Peter Grant, who's already been mentioned in quite sort of colourfully. We did have some fun, didn't we, Amit? I'm not going to be as explicit as one of your better friends earlier on. And you said groupies, I didn't. But looking at American music from England, we have to say that that being English and having to put up with Herman's Hermits wasn't much fun. And even though John Paul Jones did play with them for a bit. Oh, New York Times today? No. And so we looked to America from an early age, and we admired the work of Howlin' Wolf and the writing of Willie Dixon and the playing of Muddy Waters and the singing of the Capri's, Jive 5, Raul Donner. So much American music that really formed our musical personalities, and whether it be the much maligned and desperately in need of help Moby Grape, Arthur Lee, the whole form of American music was such an impression and so important to all of us, whether it was Bonzo listening to Bernard Purdie or Alphonse Mouzon or Lee Michaels. The whole scene in the late 60s and the early 70s was so amazingly musically varied and articulate. I suppose it's the words of an old fart, or whatever I might be now, but that in those times that music was so amazing, and it was and to be in America at that time and to be a contributor to and a contributing factor to American music and the American music scene was a great honor. And I think probably the inspiration given to us by the American public was phenomenal, and I shall never forget being on us playing with Janis and the Doors and so many amazing artists, and hanging out with the Aeroplane and seeing Jonesy and Jack Cassidy disappearing up the corner to discuss the inner movements of a bass guitar. It was a wonderful time, and all the way through our career we had a good time, and I don't remember a single television set going anywhere. Thanks.
Well, for my part of this, I must say it's a great honour to be inducted. Actually, it's the second time for me, because actually earlier on I was inducted with the Yardbirds, and it's almost like inducted, induced, and this time it's the forceps, and some of you will get that. But anyway, thank you very much, everybody.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to add also my thanks to Peter Grant, who gave us the freedom to do what we did. And also, thank you, my friends, for finally remembering my phone number. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'd just like to obviously thank everyone for making Led Zeppelin to me one of the most important bands in the world, and listening to them, and obviously my father for being one of the greatest rock and roll drummers of all time, and this one's for him, and he'd be very proud. Thank you very much.
Before we swap phone numbers, I must also say a big thanks over the last few years to the... why am I doing all this, Armin? To Bill Kirbishley, who's helped us tremendously and helped rectify, do something for us anyway. Thanks a lot, Bill Kirbishley, and thank you all our friends in New York and America. And I've never been up so late for years, so I've got to go to bed in a minute. Thanks a lot. Can you hear the guitar?
sure I'd buy you diamond rings, things right to your door. I'd buy the things I dear. I'd make you feel delight. I'd make you feel delight. I'd make you feel for your love. For your love. For your love. I hear a lot of buzzing. Sounds like long distance call. I hear a lot of buzzing. Baby, sound like long distance call. you treat me, baby, I still can hear you sing. Oh, baby, oh, baby. You know, life don't seem the same. You break my heart when you call me, when you call me, when you call me, when you call me, it's so nice. don't go. Oh, baby, please don't go. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Please don't go. shackles on, baby, please don't go. Yeah. You know, one night I was laying down, I hear my mama and papa talking. I hear them say, Lord, you're gonna let that boy boogie woogie, 'cause it's in him, and it's got to come out. Yeah, it's in him, and it's got to come out. Yeah, 'cause it's in him, and it's got to come out. So baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go. Baby, please don't go back to New Orleans, 'cause I love you so, baby, please don't. Thanks a lot. happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me